The Chinook Fire Department received a call at 4 a.m. in the morning from the railroad conductor on the Santa Fe train. He saw the flames, immediately knew what house was on fire, and the Chinook Department responded as quickly as they could. But by the time they got there, the roof and the first floor had collapsed. The intensity of the flame was, they just realized there was no way to save the house. Their biggest relief was that no one was in the house. The owners were in Billings at the time.
I first learned that the house was gone when Bruce called me. And I remember being stunned and saying, "What?" And he said, "The house is gone." And I said, I couldn't believe it. And I think to this day, part of my heart doesn't really understand that it's gone because I haven't been there to see that it's gone.
Even though we hadn't lived in the house for 30 years, Don called to say the house was gone, and Bruce called each member of the family. I was just in shock. And then I realized that the family story wasn't gone. We still had all the memories. The sad thing was that I thought one day my children should go home with me. Only my two oldest children had seen the house. In fact, only a third of the grandchildren ever remember the Montana home.
In the beginning, it was not a farm. It was land, precious land on the banks of the Milk River that comes down out of Canada, which eventually comes into the Missouri River. It was land where you can imagine that the buffaloes roamed or the coyotes howled in the night and the birds built nests in the trees. The Indians had lived there earlier on. The Chief Joseph Battleground was south of us, only 20 miles away. And when Dad saw it, he knew that it would be a place to bring his wife, Lois, and to raise their children. A place where they could teach those children to cherish the land, to have pride in their country, and to grow up to be outstanding citizens.
My earliest memories of moving to Montana, I was 9 years of age. There was my brother and I and Jeanette and Quint. 4 of us traveled to Montana.
I remember loading the boxcar in Idaho Falls. Back then the railroad and the highways usually followed each other, and so every once in a while we'd run onto a freight train going along. We knew the number of the boxcar.
And every once in a while we could identify the car in that long line of cars on the train. And arrived in Chinook, Montana, and it was 30 below.
I just remember my dad saying the reason he bought the farm was he had 2 boys growing up that needed something to do.
The birth of those boys was quite traumatic. Lois was not in good condition. She was actually blind for 10 days. And she told her mother she dreamed she had a baby, and mother said, "Yes, you had 2 babies." Mother regained her health and strength. And for 8 years, they had a family of 2 boys. The doctors had recommended that there not be any more children, but then I guess it was the faith of Eldon and Lois. Another boy was born. Quentin Frank Seamons was born. And then a year and a half later, their first baby girl, Jeanette, was born. And that family with the 4 children is the family that arrived in Montana on March 5th, 1945. 2 years later, in July of 1947, the second girl was born. That was myself, Rebecca. When I was 4 years old, a new boy, my baby brother Lynn Monroe, was born in 1951. The last member of the family was born July 14th, 1955, another baby boy, Tony Chantrell. The home had been built in the shape of a cross by the original builders who had built it in about 1910. But then each corner of the cross had been filled in. On one corner there was the front porch and the back porch and then a sewing room and a bathroom, so it added to the house from its original structure. There were cottonwood trees all around the house, so when you came across the bridge, you drove down the lane and you were surrounded by cottonwood trees.